Well, good morning, Bear Nation. I suppose we got to do the brief sooner or later, right? Cheers. About a half a liter in the old metal cup. Get some coffee going. It's a beautiful day in eastern Oklahoma, but it's not a beautiful day like it was yesterday. Yesterday was 80 degrees and sunny with a breeze. Today is 40 degrees and cloudy with a wind. So, Oklahoma is seeking counseling from medical professionals to determine whether or not she wants to be winter or spring. It's an ongoing process, and we appreciate your support in these difficult and trying times. And I felt like riding the four-wheeler this morning, so we rode the four-wheeler in. Do the brief, Bear. Shut up and go away if you don't like it. All right, Bear Independent Brief, 18MAR22. Since the onslaught of sanctions, Russia appears to have just avoided the possibility of its first foreign currency debt default in more than a century. Reports claim that it managed to make at least a portion of its payments in dollars. Why is this important? Because Russia's not allowed to play on the international banking system anymore, yet they still have sovereign debt that has to be paid. And this was seen as one of those sanctioning moves that could cripple the Russian economy. Well, if they have debts to pay, but they don't have a way to pay them, what happens? They default. Remember that pretty much every single war on the face of the earth was started for economic reasons and ended because of economic reasons. Yeah. Reports claim that it managed to make at least a portion of its payment in dollars. A senior strategist at Blue Bay Asset Management, Timothy Ash, wrote in an email, quote, "Russia blinked. It used resources in its limited war chest beyond the reach of Western sanctions to make the payment. Let's see if it ends up with the bondholders," end quote. So they made the payment, but the payment hasn't transferred. These are bonds that they had to pay out on. I think it was $119 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. So the money has moved from Russian state accounts, but it hasn't made it from Russian state accounts to bondholders' accounts yet. The BBC so far has reported that investors have not yet been paid, so the issue is not yet settled. If Russia does in fact default, investors could lose 35 to 60% of their money, but analysts do not believe this particular issue would, quote, send shockwaves through the financial markets, end quote, as in 1998. So the significance of this, right, is like, hey, Russia's fighting a war in Ukraine. They've only got limited resources, and they're being cut off from SWIFT, in the global financial system. And yet they took, hundreds of millions of dollars, or the equivalent of hundreds of millions of dollars of their money, and use that to pay bonds and settle national debt. That's an indicator. That's why we're bringing it up. They do, however, believe a deep recession will occur in Russia and that global food and energy prices will skyrocket because of the war. By the way, if it's windy, there's nothing I can do about that. I'm not in charge of the wind. I'm not an airbender. I'm not a figment. I might be a figment of your imagination. I don't know how mentally stable you are. I'm questionable at best most days, but I'm not an airbender. Not in charge of the wind. Can't do anything about it. But so let's look at this. Analysts believe a deep recession will occur in Russia. Okay. Well, analysts, this one right here, as well as many others, believe a deep recession will occur in the United States as well. What should you do about that? Be prepared. How prepared? As prepared as you can be. What does that look like? Prepper Classroom playlist here on YouTube. That's why that playlist exists. It's all the basic information that you need to know so that you can navigate appropriately. Okay? And global food and energy prices will skyrocket because of war. What does this mean? This means that war is going to be a long-term feature of the coming geopolitical climate. probably for the next few years, not for the next few weeks or months. Okay, so long-term war, which will cause energy prices and food prices to skyrocket. So what does that mean for you? Again, indicators, takeaways here, right? So if food is going to skyrocket, you're doing yourself a favor by buying and stacking food today, because it's not going to be any cheaper in the future, right? And so whatever disposable income you have, if you're not already stacking food to the rafters, you should be. And then if you are stacking food to the rafters, if you're like, dude, I ran out of rafter space, I need, I have no more space to store food. Awesome. Praise Yah. That's wonderful. Now grow food. Now take those expendable resources that you have and pour into food production rather than food storage, because food storage is the cushion that gets you from the grocery store still works and I'm still allowed to buy food there to, oh my gosh, the grocery store doesn't work anymore. What do? We eat our food storage while we spin up our agriculture, right? Your raised beds, your compost piles, your backyard chickens, your meat rabbits if you're into that, your sheep and your goats and your cattle and your whatever, right? So, and then energy, this like quintessential. This is the scary part. And remember, we're commanded to fear nothing but the Lord our God, Yahweh our Elohim. But modern society is predicated on the successful flow of electrons. CDC surmised that within 1 year of a grid down scenario, 9 out of 10 Americans would be dead. 9 out of 10 Americans. 90% of the population will be dead. That's like 300 million Americans. Boom, gone in a year if electrons stop flowing. What does that mean for you? Bear, you're scaring me. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm speaking facts to you, all right? So you, and how you receive those facts, they filter through your framework, right? Your perceptions, your predispositions, your assumptions. So if they scare you, you're probably not doing all the things that you should be doing in order to not be scared by this stuff, okay? These are just facts. The CDC said 9 out of 10 Americans will die within 1 year of a grid down scenario. And so that clearly indicates how important energy is. So you should have your own energy, whether that's like a solar generator, like the Jackery 1000 that we have, or a large-scale solar array to run your well house or power your battery bank or your whatever, right? Maybe it's fossil fuel backup generation, like an LP generator or diesel generator or whatever. Maybe it's wind if you live in an area that has a significant wind resource. It's something. I would have something figured out as far as energy is concerned. And what we can take as far as lessons learned from all this global shenaniganry is we can look at what nations are concerned about and what nations are engaged in. And we can filter that down from the macro, national, international scale to the micro, your household scale, and apply those lessons to us, okay? So if the world is worried about food and energy and war, you might want to put those things on your threat indicator list. Does that make sense? Yes, sir, it does, Bear. All right, cool. Y'all tracking? Tracking like a tank, Bear. All right, good talk, guys. In Mariupol, a theater with the word children was written twice on either side of the building was bombed. The bomb shelter held intact, and there were survivors. Russia's defense ministry denied responsibility for the attack, claiming Ukraine blew it up themselves as a, quote, bloody provocation. Takeaway here. I don't know how many times I got to say it, but don't be where the problem is. Well, those poor people couldn't get out of Mariupol. Not once the invasion started, but Russia's been amassing troops on the border for how long? And did Russia do it? Did the Ukrainians do it? This gets back to the quintessential issue that we have with the Ukraine war is information operations. That we don't know what's propaganda and what isn't, which means we have to basically assume that it's all propaganda until proven otherwise. And then how proven otherwise? By what sources? Right? And again, how are you filtering that information through your own assumptions, your own life experiences, your own preconceived notions? Right? Previously, it was reported that missile strikes landed just 10 miles from the Polish border. Now a series of airspace violations by drone have occurred. Woo! A drone flew into Croatia's airspace last week carrying a bomb. Then another another drone crossed into Romanian airspace. And most recently, Ukraine's military shot down a Russian drone that had entered Ukraine via Poland's airspace. So a Russian drone was in Poland and then entered into Ukraine. See, the lines of conflict are blurring. And whether that's intentional or unintentional, this gets back to NATO General, I forget what his pompous title is, but the head dude, Jens Stoltenberg, Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg at NATO, who's basically said, look, Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all, even if there's an accidental conflict across a NATO border. All of this is preparatory to build a mandate amongst the general populace that, yes, we need to get NATO involved in Ukraine. And that's going to be a long and bloody war that's going to embroil all of the West in long-term, probably conventional warfare. And, well, I don't want war at all. I like conventional warfare more than I like thermonuclear warfare. Now, something else. So I was reading in the Tactical Paramedic Handbook yesterday. I was reading in there, just reviewing some stuff, and it talks about TCCC, Tactical Combat Casualty Care, is based upon lessons learned by the 75th Ranger Regiment, going all the way back to Mogadishu, Operation Gothic Serpent. And it's basically like, if you've seen Black Hawk Down, that's a part of that overarching NATO operation where 30,000 NATO troops were deployed to basically take out Muhammad Farah Aidid, who was a warlord who was controlling the flow of food. And in a year, killed 300,000 people with a militia force of 6,000-ish men, roughly 4,000 to 6,000-ish men, and was controlling the flow of food. And this was referred to as a genocide. 300,000 people had been killed, and NATO's got to go in and do something. And so, as part of Operation Gothic Serpent, you had 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. You had, was it Charlie Squadron? Charlie Squadron of Delta, Air Force Pararescuemen, Air Force Combat Controllers, 16 birds from the 160th Special Operations Air Regiment, and 2 elements of Naval Special Warfare. In addition to 30,000 NATO troops to go deal with a genocide that's being perpetrated because of a lack of food. And you know what happened? And there's no pride in this, especially as an American, there's no pride in this. But you know what happened? A bunch of skinnies with AKs whipped our asses, killed a bunch of our people, and we had to leave with our tails tucked between our legs. Because of food. Guys, it says in the Bible, 87 times there was a famine in the land. It's almost like the Father wants us to understand something. This stuff's important, right? This stuff's important. And be aware that these genocides and these atrocities are often used, much like they were in 93 in Mogadishu, used to get that public mandate for military intervention by the West in these regions that are otherwise forgotten regions, for us to go in there and bring peace, right? Well, it's not really peace that we end up bringing. It's certainly not peaceful for the men and women that are over there getting shot at and blown up. But it is profitable. Yeah. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from that. I would recommend strongly you onboard those lessons. I don't know how many times I got to say it. I'm not going to stand in the breadline, and neither should you. Like, I'm going to be a breadline for the people that I love, not the other way around. I'm not getting on the bus. I'm not standing in the breadline. I'm not playing those stupid horseshit games. And we're being pushed. Public opinion is, we're being forced into 2 camps right now. You either support Vladimir Putin, or you support Volodymyr Zelensky, one or the other. You're not allowed to have a middle ground. You either get the jab or you don't get the jab, right? Like left, right, black, white, up, down, good, bad. Yeah. That's called the Hegelian dialectic, right? And you're seeing it play out in Russia and Ukraine right now. It's called thesis, antithesis. You take thesis and antithesis and you smash them together and you get what's called synthesis. And if you control the inputs on both sides, when you smash them together, you get to control the output as well. So, these drone incidents are forcing NATO to decide how it should respond, or if it should respond to such violations. One official told reporters, quote, "We are trying to communicate with Russia, of course, but it requires two to communicate. Russia and the U.S. have ceased surveillance flights by drone within Ukraine, though the U.S. is using them, drones, on the border. NATO is flying AWACS, airborne warning and control systems, near Ukraine also." What do we need AWACS for? Yeah. Intel gathering, coordinating troop movements. It's command and control. So NATO's flying command and control near Ukraine. What does that tell you? By the way, first-hand accounts from people that have contacted me directly, NATO and the United States, we are stacking troops and equipment and material in Eastern Europe. I think it's just a matter of time before we have, like I said, conventional war in Ukraine. Hot water. Let's turn this hot water into hot bean water. There we go. That's what we want right there. Fabulous, tremendous. Believe it. Let's see. NATO is flying its AWACS systems near Ukraine. Tom Krakako, a senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, told CNN, quote, "There's lots and lots of drones flying around, and so everybody's kind of looking over their shoulder nervously at what's going on. That's what we want. That's what we want. That's a good idea. Let's do that." Given the scale of what Russia is undertaking here, this sort of thing is not surprising. It's one of the reasons that everyone is wired so tight right now. End quote. Stand by. The rhetoric continues to escalate. Biden told reporters that he thought Vladimir Putin was a war criminal. A spokesman for the Kremlin called the comment, quote, "unacceptable and unforgivable." End quote. Former Russian president, now Putin's aide Dmitry Medvedev, was speaking in the context of the U.S. when he said, quote, "Russia has the might to put all our brash enemies in their place." End quote. Talk of World War III has emerged in the mainstream, and no developments so far are assuaging those concerns. So rhetoric on both sides. We're being forced into this paradigm, left, right, yes, no, up, down, good, bad, war or no war. And isn't it interesting, anecdotally, how much war we get when the liberal Democrats are in control? And y'all know me, I'm no fan of Republicans either. But, yeah. There's a lot of people who think that this war with Russia was supposed to happen when Hillary was supposed to win in whatever. Come on, Brian, kick into high gear. Hillary didn't win. We didn't get our war with Russia. And so there was a leader selected for us here in the United States of America with very interesting ties to Ukraine. And now all of a sudden, there's a war with Russia in Ukraine. I'm sure that's just a coincidence, though. It's got to be just a coincidence. In an NBC News interview, Lester Holt asked Ukraine's President Zelensky, quote, "President Biden has been very clear that he's worried about provocations that could trigger World War III. Do you understand his concern there, and do you agree that it wouldn't take much to end up in World War III?" End quote. "Well," Zelensky replied through an interpreter, "nobody knows whether it may have already started, and what is the possibility of this war, if Ukraine will fall. in case Ukraine will fall? It's very hard to say, and we've seen this 80 years ago when the Second World War has started, and there were similar tragedies in history. In any case, wars tend to end up in millions of people lost and people die and millions of buildings destroyed. Now we have different technologies, nuclear weapons. In this case, we have the whole civilization at stake. End quote. Yes, Volodymyr Zelensky, that is true. It's also true that Volodymyr Zelensky was installed by the American government in Russia's backyard. It's also true that he was legitimately an actor at one point. It's also true, at least in my mind, that very much so all of this is bread and circuses. It's business as usual. The economy's in the tank. Why is the economy in the tank? Oh, right. Nobody went to work for 2 years because of the flu. So what's a good way to... By the way, you don't hear about that anymore, do you? Nobody cares about the new Delta Omicron variant or whatever the hell it's called. I certainly don't. Nobody cares. The fear of that thing's over. We need some new fear. Hey, let's serve up World War III. Remember that Cold War thing that we did where we taught school children to crawl under their desks at school as if that was going to keep them from being irradiated by nuclear fallout? That's a great idea. Yeah, remember all of that? G.I. Joe, Wolverines, you know, the M81 Woodland generation. Yeah, they know how to be afraid of Russians. Let's do that war with Russia thing. And by the way, let's sprinkle in there some nuclear holocaust. That's a good idea. Let's do that. Pull that binder off the shelf and let's play that card. Yeah. If you're on Patreon, you got the relevant links today. If you're not, you don't. Patreon.com. Search for Bear Independent. You'll find us there. There's also a link at bearindependent.com to sign up on Patreon. I don't know if you noticed. I'm just not particularly interested in playing those games today. I'm not feeling it. What do you need to be doing? Get independent from this broken, fragile system. These air quote elected officials don't give a single flying F about you. They don't care. You are not part of their equation. And if you are not part of their equation, why are you trying to be a part of their equation? And why are you letting them be a part of your equation? Separate. Be set apart. Be sanctified. Come out of her, my people, lest you partake of her sins and receive of her plagues. GTFO, man. Get the question all the time, but especially lately, like, Bear, how do I know when it's time for me to like get out of the system? Man, if you're asking that question, you're not even paying attention. You're still trying to whore in Babylon. Stop. Stop it. She's a whore, man. Why won't she treat me like a wife? Because she's a whore, man. What did you think was going to happen? Oh, man, I poured my seed into her, and she didn't treat it with respect, and she didn't bear any fruit, and I just can't make any traction here. I just can't get ahead yet because she's a whore, man. She's not a wife. Read the Bible. The Father prepares a refuge in the wilderness for his people. I've had people say to me, well, you're a religious extremist. I think religion is horseshit. Religion is man-made. I do read the Bible and do what it says, though. So, and also, many of those same people, you might notice I've been on this kick lately, many of those same people, they're like, you're a religious extremist, or I don't like it when you talk about spirituality at your channel. Kiss my ass. Go somewhere else. Many of those people self-identify as patriots. Do you even know what that word means? Do you even know what freedom means? Freedom doesn't mean that I have to think the same way that you do. It means that I have a constitutionally protected, divine, God-given right to think and feel and act however I see fit, as long as I'm not actually negatively impacting your quality of life, your existence. That's what freedom means. So this we will defend. You might learn what it is that you're trying to defend first before you start tearing down your brothers and sisters. Okay? Yeah, there's a little for you. Now, that being said, it's a beautiful day. Do we have anything to be worried about today? No. Nope. Do we have anything to be fearful about today? No. Nope. Not even a little bit. Is the world annoying AF? Absolutely. Absolutely. Can we be concerned? Should we be concerned? Yeah, there's lots of things to be concerned about. But if it's robbing you of your joy, if it's robbing me of my joy, we're living our lives the wrong way. Okay? This is just data, ladies and gentlemen. It's just input. How you respond to that input, what you do with that input, that's up to you. And by the way, how much of that input you receive, that you onboard, that's also up to you. The moment it begins to rob you of your joy, stop. Pivot, homeboy, pivot, homegirl, go do something else. Go do something meaningful. So, now, I wanted to show you guys something cool. At least I think it's cool. If you're not into the portion of the show where I talk about how to support the show and how to save lives, 35 lives saved to date, by the way, then this is your opportunity for you to skedaddle, beat feet, get out of here, go do something else. But if you are into that, let me see here, super high speed production quality. This right here, which is stuck. This is the Gen Zero Bearfac. Gen Zero. This is the first one that was ever made, ever. This was the original concept for the Bearfac right here. This was made by Cody at Sojourn Gear. Tie-on Molly on the back, dual tourniquet holder on the outside. It's got an internal pouch on the inside that's stuffed with all the cool stuff. But this was the original concept for the Bearfac, okay? There's one of these in the world that exists, and this is it. And you can see where it is. Look, it's dirty. It's got mud on it. It's beat up. This thing's been bouncing around for 3 years doing the things, and it still works. And I've got it attached to this satchel full of M4 magazines for reasons. But from that to, hey look, an SOB. Hey look, a humidor. But from that to this, okay? This is the Gen 3 Bearfac. Oh, how far we have come. 35 lives saved to date, which is awesome. We're on 4 continents. Dude, these are on 4 continents right now, electively with all branches of the U.S. Armed Forces. How badass is that? And that means electively, they looked at their IFAC, these servicemen, servicewomen looked at their IFACs that they were issued, then they looked at this and they said, duh, I'm buying one of these. And you might not know this, but our military doesn't get paid very well. And so the fact that they took the little bit of money that they had and they bought one of these electively so that they wouldn't friggin' die rather than the horseshit IFAC that they were issued is humbling AF to me. And you know how many like moms and dads buy these for their sons and daughters that are in the armed forces? How many moms and dads buy these for their sons and daughters that are in law enforcement? It's incredible to me. Like it's humbling. It's absolutely humbling. This, Bearfac 3.0, 35 people are still alive because of this freaking thing. And it started as a concept, just a concept. It started as this idea in my barn. About 3 years ago. About 3 years ago, I had an idea. And about 2 years ago, that idea became reality. And now, 2 years later, there are thousands of these around the world. And 35 people are still alive because of it. Badass. Absolutely badass. RefugeMedical.com. You boys and girls know that your promo code is Bear Nation. Get your free shipping on everything in the store, which is a hell of an offer right now because the entire world is buying medical equipment. Ask me how I know. I'm on the phone every day, every damn day, multiple times a day, scouring the world for medical components for y'all, so that our people can have these things so that they don't die. I can't tell you, because I would be betraying the trust of people who have told me the exact details, but the Defense Logistics Agency is buying the ever-loving piss out of things like this, okay? And then, so that's for our people, our boys and girls. And then there are exorbitant amounts of this stuff going to Eastern Europe right now. Indicator. I'm telling you, indicator. Get them while you can. If you don't have one, and okay, it's not us. I don't like Refuge Medical. All right, go buy a Skinny Medic kit. Get something that'll work. I can't afford a Bear Fac. Okay, get a basic bleeder kit, a tourniquet, a pressure bandage, and 2 packs of compressed gauze. Okay, get something. The world's freaking stupid. But how badass is it that even amongst the stupid ass world that's out there, this thing has saved 35 people's lives. This is the Bear Fac 3.0. And this is the SOB. Look at how small the SOB is. The SOB weighs as much as 1 loaded AR magazine. And it's got your cat tourniquet, your chest seals, nasopharyngeal airway, combat gauze, pressure bandage, duct tape, high-fin chest seals, all of that, right? Both of which designed to work the entirety of the March algorithm, massive bleeding airway, respiratory circulation, head injury, hypothermia, and everything else. And then, you know, if you're actually a cool guy, like a real cool guy who has both a ballistic helmet and an M4 plus one of these and knows the things, then you get into what's called March Pause, which is, yeah, you have to like be in a unit in order to be taught that stuff. But anyway, it works the entirety of the March algorithm. And it's really, really, really humbling to me that our little business has been put in a position, A, to touch so many of y'all's lives, and B, to save 35 people's lives is incredible. And then C, right now, as global conflict is kicking off, the amount of people that we have reaching out to us for help is, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. It's insane in the best way possible. And we are, to say we're working overtime is the understatement of the century. We are in a hyperdrive, sourcing whatever we can for y'all. And I appreciate you guys and girls very much. Thank you for supporting RefugeMedical.com. And then if you need to learn how to not die, RefugeTraining.com. We'll teach you. We'll teach your school. We'll teach your church. We'll teach your mutual assistance group. We'll teach your sheriff's department. Whatever, whoever. As long as you're not a scumbag, we'll teach you. If you like flying planes into buildings, we'll just turn you into compost instead. But if you're a good person, we'll teach you. There's like 14 or 16 class dates up at refugetraining.com right now, and you can use promo code BearNation there for 5% off. That's my thanks to you. We don't operate with a lot of overhead either, by the way. I'm not a rich man. I don't intend to ever be a rich man. We want to get the best kits and the best training to as many people as possible while still making enough money to pay the 18 families that work with us a living wage. So that's what I got for today. The key takeaway for today is, man, do the things and don't let all this global horse shit get you spun up in a tizzy. Don't do it. It's a tool of the enemy. Fear is a tool of the enemy. Fear nothing but Yahweh your Elohim, the Lord your God. Y'all have a blessed day. Shalom.